The Arctic is changing, and the Inuit are proving they don't need the government to get power. For years, they have struggled with dirty diesel fuel, high costs, and power that could stop at any moment. But now, they are finding their own way. Solar panels, wind turbines, and water power are bringing clean energy to their homes. Tune in, the fight for energy independence is just beginning, and the old way, it's on its last legs. The Inuit energy revolution. Most communities have been stuck using diesel generators to keep things running. Sounds fine, right? Except diesel isn't exactly cheap, clean, or easy to get when you live in a place where ice roads disappear with the seasons, and storms can cut you off from the rest of the world in a heartbeat. Hauling diesel to these remote communities costs a fortune, and when the weather doesn't cooperate, people can be left high and dry, or rather, cold and in the dark. Not to mention, burning diesel is nasty for the environment and for the people breathing it in every day. But what happens when the fuel runs out? Because one day it will. One of the more surprising solutions? Solar power. Sounds crazy at first. After all, Arctic winters are basically one long dark night. But summer, that's another story. The sun barely sets, meaning solar panels can soak up energy nearly all day long. Some places, like Sanikiluaq in Nunavut, have already started slapping solar panels onto important buildings, proving that, yes, solar power can work up here. But let's not stop at the sun. There's also wind. If there's one thing the Arctic has plenty of, it's wind that could knock you off your feet. And that kind of power can be put to good use. Wind turbines have been popping up in places like Ramea, Newfoundland, and Labrador, where they've figured out how to mix wind power with hydrogen storage and a bit of backup diesel to keep things running smoothly. This setup has cut down on fuel use big time and proven that wind energy isn't just for fancy eco projects down south. It can work up here too. Then there's hydroelectric power. If you've got a river that keeps flowing even when the temperature hits "why do we live here" levels, you've got a potential goldmine of energy. Some communities are looking at small-scale hydro projects to harness this power, cutting out the middleman and making sure their electricity comes from right in their own backyard. And let's not forget biomass, another old-school method getting a modern twist. The Inuit have always used wood and peat to stay warm, but new tech makes it possible to turn local materials into a serious energy source. The real kicker in all of this? The people aren't just sitting around waiting for someone else to do the work. They're leading the charge. They've got companies like Tarkatai Energy in Nunavik, which is locally owned and run, pushing for energy projects that actually benefit their communities instead of lining the pockets of outside investors. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. Setting up wind farms, solar panels, and hydroelectric plants isn't cheap, and the government still plays a role in getting some of these projects off the ground. But the long game here is about independence. Finding ways to generate power that won't leave the next generation stuck in the same cycle of dependence on expensive, unreliable fuel. The people have been adapting to their environment for thousands of years, and their approach to electricity is no different. Instead of waiting around for outside help, they're making moves, building sustainable solutions that work for them, and proving that even in the toughest conditions, you don't have to be stuck with the old way of doing things. As they push forward, they're not just cutting down on pollution and costs. They're setting an example for remote communities everywhere. If they can make it work in the Arctic, what's stopping everyone else? New projects are being planned, expanding solar farms, testing newer, more efficient wind turbines, and even eyeing next-generation geothermal technology, tapping into the heat beneath the Earth's surface to provide energy. The reality is that no single solution will be the answer for every community. A combination of solar, wind, hydro, biomass, and newer tech is what will allow the people to fully shake off the burden of unreliable, government-controlled energy solutions. Even the mindset is shifting. The younger generation, many of whom are pursuing education in engineering and renewable energy, are bringing fresh ideas to the table. Local schools are integrating hands-on learning programs to train future energy experts within the community. It's not just about installing solar panels and wind turbines. It's about creating a workforce that can maintain and innovate on these systems for decades to come. The people aren't just solving their own problems. They're setting an example for how the rest of the world should be thinking about sustainable, independent energy. They're proving that even in one of the most extreme climates on the planet, it's possible to take control, harness natural resources, and build something that lasts. The future of Arctic energy isn't in the hands of distant policymakers or corporate executives. It's in the hands of the people who live there, who know the land, and who refuse to be dependent on a system that was never designed for them in the first place. The people have always used nature wisely. Now, they're turning to the sun, wind, and water to keep their communities running. The shift to sustainable energy. The Arctic is a beast of a place, cold beyond belief, dark for months, stretching out in frozen silence. Yet the Inuit don't just survive here, they own it. They've spent generations making this land work for them, not by forcing it into submission, but by moving with its rhythm. And that includes how they get their energy. Unlike the rest of the world, which gobbles up resources without a second thought, they have always been about sustainability. They've never been ones to waste, and that philosophy has shaped everything, from how they build shelter to how they power their communities. For centuries, energy wasn't about plugging into anything. It was about using what nature provided. No wires, no power plants, just pure survival smarts. The fat from seals, whales, and caribou wasn't just food, it was fuel. The kullik, a stone oil lamp, burned animal fat to light and heat homes. It was simple, but it worked. And then there were the igloos, architectural wonders designed to keep the cold out and the warmth in. Snow might seem flimsy, but packed right, it traps heat like insulation. This wasn't just luck, it was knowledge passed down through the ages. And knowledge was survival. If you didn't learn how to use every single thing around you, you wouldn't last long. Efficiency wasn't an option. It was the only way to make it. Then modernization hit, and with it came diesel generators. At first, it seemed like a game changer. Consistent power, no need to rely on animal fat for heat. But there was a catch. Diesel has to be hauled in from far away. That's expensive. And in a land where ice roads can vanish overnight and storms can shut down supply chains, it's unreliable. One bad season, and entire communities can be left scrambling for fuel. Add in the pollution from burning diesel, and it became clear. This wasn't a sustainable solution. It didn't take long to see the bigger picture. This dependency was pulling control away from their communities and putting it in the hands of outside suppliers. They, always adapting, started looking for better options. Renewable energy wasn't just an environmental move, it was about independence. The less they relied on outside fuel, the stronger their communities became. One of the first big shifts was towards solar power. It might seem strange, after all, the Arctic spends months in total darkness. But during the summer, it's the exact opposite. The sun never sets, which means an endless supply of energy. Communities like Sanikiluwak in Nunavut jumped on this, using solar panels to cut down on diesel use and bring costs under control. But no single solution is enough. That's why wind power is another big player. The Arctic isn't just cold, it's windy, really windy. Instead of fighting it, they harness it. Wind turbines, strategically placed to catch those brutal gusts, are helping keep the lights on. And the smartest communities aren't choosing just one energy source. They're blending them. Hybrid systems that mix solar, wind, and battery storage ensure a steady supply of power, no matter what the weather throws at them. Water is another overlooked energy source. While many Arctic rivers freeze solid in winter, they're still powerful. Small-scale hydroelectric projects are gaining traction, allowing some communities to tap into flowing water without harming the environment. In Inuit, research is underway to figure out how to make hydro energy work in a way that respects traditional land use and keeps ecosystems intact. This isn't just about generating power. It's about doing it in a way that keeps everything balanced, just like it's always been. Biomass is also making a comeback. Historically, their communities used wood and peat for heating. Now, modern biomass technology makes it possible to do this in a cleaner, more efficient way. In Kuujjuaq, wood chip heating systems are cutting diesel reliance and keeping energy local. Instead of shipping in fuel from thousands of miles away, communities are using their own resources, creating jobs, and reinforcing their self-sufficiency. This is about more than just heating homes. It's about keeping the power within the community itself, rather than relying on expensive outside sources that can be cut off at any time. This isn't just about swapping one energy source for another. It's about taking control. Energy sovereignty is a game changer. Instead of being at the mercy of government policies or distant fuel suppliers, they owned organizations like Takuti Energy in Nunavik are leading the charge. They're making sure new energy solutions fit their values and priorities, rather than just being whatever's easiest for outsiders. Every step towards self-sufficiency is a step away from dependence, and that's something no one here is willing to compromise on. Younger generations are getting involved too. Schools are teaching renewable energy tech alongside traditional knowledge. More of them are studying engineering and environmental science, bringing those skills back home to build and maintain energy systems. It's not enough to install solar panels and call it a day. These systems need experts who understand both the technology and the land. By training local talent, they are making sure they stay in control of their energy future. The last thing they want is to trade diesel dependency for reliance on outside engineers who don't understand the unique challenges of the Arctic. That doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing. The Arctic is one of the most unforgiving places on Earth. Equipment needs to be tough enough to withstand extreme cold, brutal winds, and constant ice buildup. Transporting massive wind turbines or solar panels into remote communities is expensive and complicated. And while renewable energy is cutting diesel use, it's not completely replacing it just yet. Some backup fuel is still needed, but the goal is clear. Get as close to full independence as possible. The real power here isn't just in the electricity, it's in the ability to choose, to decide what works best for the community without waiting for permission or depending on outside sources. Every solar panel, every wind turbine, every hydro project is more than just infrastructure. It's a declaration of autonomy. The world might be playing catch-up, scrambling to find sustainable solutions, but they are already proving that the future doesn't have to look like the past. It can be smarter, cleaner, and, most importantly, entirely their own. For them, energy isn't just about power, it's about control. And with new technology, they're taking charge of their future. Inuit power, Inuit future. Out here in the Arctic, where your breath turns to ice before you even finish exhaling, surviving isn't just about toughing it out. It's about knowing how to adapt. The Inuit have been doing exactly that for centuries, living in conditions that would send most people running for the nearest heated building. But survival isn't just about food, shelter, and warmth anymore. Now, it's about something modern, something crucial: energy. For a long time, the way to keep the lights on in Inuit communities was diesel. Big, noisy generators chugging away, burning through fuel that had to be hauled in from far, far away. At first, it seemed like a solid solution. Simple, portable, got the job done. But then reality hit. Diesel is ridiculously expensive when you have to ship it across frozen landscapes or stormy seas. It's also dirty. Spills? Disastrous. Breathing in the fumes? Not exactly a health boost. And let's not even start on how much carbon it pumps into the air. It didn't take long for people to realize they were at the mercy of a fuel that was unreliable, polluting, and draining their wallets. Something had to change. Enter microgrids, small, independent power networks that don't need some massive outside energy company to function. Instead of depending on fuel shipments that may or may not arrive, these systems run on the very things the Arctic has in abundance: Sun, wind, water, and ingenuity. Imagine that, a power grid designed to work with the land instead of fighting against it. Solar power might sound like a joke up here. After all, the sun vanishes for months in the winter, but that's only half the story. When summer hits, it's sunlight, non-stop, for weeks on end. That means solar panels get to work overtime, soaking up enough energy to make a serious dent in fuel dependence. And some communities have already jumped on board. Take Sanikiluaq, for example. Solar panels are up and running, cutting back on diesel use and saving cash in the process. But solar alone isn't enough. Winter is long, dark, and unforgiving. That's where wind power comes in. The Arctic is one of the windiest places on Earth. Might as well put that to good use, right? Some communities are doing just that. Nunatsiavut, for example, is installing wind turbines that, when paired with battery storage, will take care of a huge chunk of their energy needs. Less diesel, fewer emissions, and no more sweating over whether the next fuel shipment will make it through. Then there's hydropower. The Inuit have always known how to read the land, and they're applying that knowledge to energy. Instead of massive dams that wreck ecosystems, they're looking at small-scale hydroelectric projects that harness natural river flows. Iqaluit is already studying how to make this work. If they pull it off, they'll have a steady, year-round source of clean power, no sun or wind required. But all of this means nothing without a way to store energy. Because let's face it, renewable energy isn't always predictable. No sun, no solar, no wind, no turbines spinning. That's where battery tech comes in. High-capacity lithium-ion batteries, hydrogen storage. These are game changers. They let communities store up power when conditions are right and tap into it when needed. Some projects are already integrating these systems, meaning energy security is no longer just a dream. Beyond just keeping the lights on, microgrids mean control. For too long, Inuit communities have had to play by the rules of energy companies and governments that don't live in the Arctic, don't understand its challenges, and don't prioritize the people actually living there. With microgrids, the power, literally and figuratively, stays in the community. No more waiting on decisions made in boardrooms thousands of miles away. Inuit-owned businesses are stepping up to make this happen. Tarkuti Energy in Nunavik is a prime example. They're not just bringing in solar panels and turbines, they're making sure Inuit workers are trained to install, maintain, and operate these systems. The goal? Keep the knowledge and the jobs in the community instead of handing them off to outside corporations. Let's talk about money. Diesel isn't just dirty, it's a financial black hole. Importing it costs a fortune. Burning it is even worse. Shifting to renewable energy means communities can spend less on fuel and more on things that actually matter. Education, healthcare, better infrastructure. And with new energy systems comes new employment. Microgrids don't just create power, they create jobs. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. Setting up microgrids isn't cheap. The tech, the infrastructure, the training, it all requires serious investment. Governments and international partners have kicked in funding, but long-term support is still needed to make sure these projects don't just get built, but actually thrive. And then there are the engineering challenges. Wind turbines have to withstand ice buildup. Solar panels need to function in low-light conditions. And everything has to survive brutal sub-zero temperatures. And let's not forget the red tape. Many Inuit communities are still technically tied to larger, government-controlled grids, even if those grids barely serve them. Energy policies made for cities with massive power plants don't work in the Arctic. Change is slow, but Inuit leaders are pushing for policies that actually make sense for their communities. Despite the challenges, the momentum is there. More Inuit communities are proving that microgrids aren't just a theory, they work. And as tech improves, costs drop, and more success stories emerge, these systems will only get better. In fact, what's happening in the Arctic is catching the world's attention. If microgrids can survive in some of the harshest conditions on Earth, they can survive anywhere. Microgrids aren't just a technical solution, they're a declaration, a refusal to be dependent on energy systems that are expensive, unreliable, and harmful. Instead, Inuit communities are proving, once again, that they know how to adapt. And this time, they're showing the world how it's done. Would you trust an energy system that depends on forces as unpredictable as the Arctic itself? The Inuit are making it work. Leave your opinion in the comments. Like and subscribe for more.